Reed is not for everyone.
Everybody was smart, everybody was a misfit.
I came up with, as my definition, rigorous, intense, critical, audacious.
A spirit of irreverence, a sense of humor, the trickster. It's very important.
Reed teaches, inspires, demands depth, and is defined by the equality across disciplines.
How do I define Reed? As not perfect, but as close to the best possible environment for certain students, certain faculty, certain staff as we can get.
What people thought Reed was about and what it meant to them. My favorite was confidence and trust in my own judgment that allowed me to decide what I was good at, what I was going to do, and what I was not going to do.
My lasting impression of Reed is that it helped me to decide how I would go about thinking.
I'm not just going to jump when you tell me to jump, and I'm not just going to ask how high. I'm going to ask why you want me to jump, what's the goal, why are you asking me instead of somebody else, and has anybody else jumped before me? You know, so it's that whole concept of I'm not just going to do it blindly, I'm not going to ask you one question, I'm going to get to the root of the problem, and that's what Reed really enables us to all do.
I arrived at Reed wanting to be liberally educated. True, I didn't know what I wanted to do, what I wanted to become of me, but I knew I didn't want to be narrow. Let me tell you one thing I remember quite distinctly. Hume 110, my first paper conference, the assignment was the figure of Odysseus as hero in the Iliad. It's funny how you remember these things. I showed up for my paper conference at the appointed time. The professor amiably told me that this was a nice paper. That was a good start, I thought. And then he told me it was a shame I had written all over the nice paper. That was a shock to the system. It made me very uncomfortable. But it was the right thing to do.
From your first week, you're with a group of people that are very different from you, very different backgrounds, very different interests, very different mannerisms, but you learn to discuss issues that might be considered provocative by other groups. So this idea of getting together with diverse viewpoints and just talking about things and really using critical reasoning and I would say science-based decision-making is really very important. And I see that now that I'm no longer at Reed, that the rest of the world doesn't always work that way.
Everybody was expected to do the work and do it well. A girl had to be assertive, had to be ready to make an argument and stick to it, and interrupt her classmates to defend it and not let anybody talk her down. So I learned to do that.
What we learned by studying the development of Western thought were important lessons about thought itself. This was thinking about thinking. It was a journey that made us more aware of the limits to rational analysis, of observation, of self-awareness. A healthy skepticism, not merely about doctrine or dogma, but even about the boundaries of academic disciplines, accepted teachings, or the thought process itself.
The essence of Reed remains the same to me, and that's the conference system, where just three simple questions asked of anybody. What do you mean? Why do you say that? And what's the evidence to support your position?
Students at Reed are, they're fun to talk to. And people who've been at Reed are fun to talk to. And the reason is, in part, it seems to me, because at Reed they learned to develop and defend a point of view. To develop and defend a point of view. And that makes them engaging.
We were studying the Petrarchan sonnet. We had to write a paper about a certain sonnet. Was it un-Petrarchan or anti-Petrarchan? Did I know? I hadn't a clue. However, it occurred to me that it wasn't a problem of black and white. It might not be a problem with a right and a wrong answer. So I picked a side, un-Petrarchan, and I mustered every argument I could think of in its support. and Mr. Hale would complimented me on my paper, a thrilling moment. And right then I understood that what mattered was the argument, the pathway, and the determination to take it, the rationale rather than one narrow goal.
Reed brought together the currents of kind of the beginnings of a youth rebellion in people like me who weren't even, radical in any other sense, with a feeling of an intense intellectual adventure.
That sense that, every conversation in the dining hall, at a coffee shop, at a party, and obviously in conference, being this almost, life or death struggle for truth, to get to the bottom of what's really important.
But I think what really prepared me to do what I do now was how science was taught. Sometimes not so well, sometimes very well indeed, but almost always not as a body of finished ideas, a ship in a bottle, but as an ongoing human endeavor.
It is our place to look around and test shared assumptions, to take on conventional wisdom and try to extract what's useful and get rid of what's not useful, but ultimately gain a little enlightenment. And I feel like that must sound grandiose, and I'm sure that I know that I'm sometimes difficult for my editors to deal with in the newsroom and my colleagues, because I have this sense of this is important, and when we have to pay attention to the words that we use, and we have to take seriously what we say and what we print and what we think, that it all matters. And I do feel that I was deeply imprinted by that way of living back when I was a college student at Reed.
You don't get any better if you're comfortable. And if, as I hope, Reed still makes students uncomfortable in that sort of way, it's something to be very proud of.
We all have to be sure that Reed does not get to be too comfortable a place. It must never become intellectually comfortable. It has to keep on producing graduates who think hard and argue clearly, who push, challenge, aggravate, and achieve, even though it's very hard work.
Something happens here. Something hard, and perhaps for some like me, something painful. But that constructive self-doubt, that humility about our own conclusions, and the understanding that those conclusions need to be constantly questioned in order to strengthen them, that is a powerful tool that Reed gave me that I carry with me today.
For me, Reed was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. In the quality of friends that I had, the thoughts that I made, the ability to make my own decisions, find my own answers, think for myself, and meet wonderful, wonderful people.
A lot of people have said that Reed made them feel more self-confident, and I can't, unfortunately, corroborate that. It did not make me feel more self-confident until later, much, much later, when I realized that I was one of those smart people. Hey, at the time I wasn't so sure.
My name is Lee DeCola, and I guess your class is the class you would have graduated with had you graduated. So I would have graduated in 1967, but I left in 1964, dropped out, went to UCLA, where I think the smallest class at UCLA was bigger than all of Reed College. And then I dropped out of UCLA and went to Berkeley and got 2 degrees, and then I went to MIT and dropped out of there. So Reed taught me how to drop out.
Every day I thank all the people who were there for me at Reed, because it really helped me to do what I do now.
It seems to me the commitment to truth in all that and all that means is probably the most important thing that defines Reed and defines, in a sense, my identity that I take from Reed, is a commitment to understanding truth broadly understood.